Hello again, how you all doing? How you all looking? Well, not the case may be. I think this is the most videos I've made in 1 week ever. I don't think I've ever talked about the same thing for as long in my life. Because we're on the drones again. I'm going to be droning on about the drones. Aye. And they're well, droning us, really. Come on, you! Stop being such an attention whore, he really is. Come on, mister! God, he's right, slapper, he really is. Anyway, yeah, the drones. And like I said, they're droning us. Not in a UAP sense, but in a, we know exactly what the fuck they are sense. I was watching a TikTok compilation channel today, Mrs. Collins. Lovely girl, lovely woman. Mrs. Fisher says she's really lovely, she is. She's got a right nice elfin looking face. I'm like, yeah, okay, fair enough. Me and Mrs. Collins, we've been having a good few chats, a few times. And comments of each other's videos. But she, I'll put a link in the description anyway for her channel, because she's a good one. Very level-headed. It's good to see. But I saw something, right? It was Rand Paul, and he was talking about an act, right, that they were putting through Congress. Yeah. Now, what is one of the things I said about the? Oh, hold on! Look at that. That's spooky, isn't it? Yeah. That's my local park. Anyway, it's like somehow Silent Hill, horror game even. What are you doing, Miles? Get off that! Come on. Pull that stick down. You're not sticking that with you. Bloody. Anyway, he was talking about an act that they were trying to put through Congress, right? Now, what's one of the things that I said to watch out for with these drones? Take a look at this.
Reserving the right to object. No one disputes that drones flying in airspace could be a danger. The drones flying over the Super Bowl could be a danger. The drones flying over our military bases could be a danger. That's why it's illegal. It's currently illegal, and the federal government has the capacity to investigate and stop drones that are in airspace, over our military bases, following our ships. We have that capacity. But what is disputed, and what the Biden administration is currently telling us, is they don't see a problem. So if there is a problem, let the Biden administration be forthcoming, let us know the extent of the problem, let us know who's flying the drones, and let us know what's going on. Instead, this bill says, well, we don't know, the Biden administration doesn't know, but why don't we give the power to the local officials to go after drones? But I rise today to object to this unanimous consent request because at the time, public trust in government is in historic lows. This body must not rush to grant sweeping surveillance powers without proper consideration and debate by the committees of jurisdiction, which is what I pledge to do beginning in January when we will be in charge of the committees. Yet what is going on is exactly what this legislation seeks to do now, is to expand federal authority to intercept communications and disrupt drone activity, powers that raise serious concerns for Americans' privacy, civil liberties, and Fourth Amendment protections against unwarranted search and seizure. We are being told this legislation is urgent, that it is needed to address an imminent drone threat, yet the government itself admits no such threat exists. So either there is a threat or there isn't a threat, but the Biden administration keeps saying, Well, it's all normal stuff and it's just planes. So it is or it isn't. Why don't we try to get to the truth of the matter of what actually exists and what the threat is before we propose legislation? Federal agencies, including the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI, have stated clearly that there is no current national security risk, no public safety concern, and no unlawful drone activity requiring intervention. So there either is a problem or there isn't a problem. If there is a problem, let's discuss how to do it while protecting the communications of innocent Americans whose communications could be caught up in this legislation. Until the assessment, the federal assessment changes. The assessment that it isn't a problem changes to that it is a problem, and these are the malefactors. These are the people that are orchestrating this. Let's get that from the Biden administration. Tell us what the problem is. Tell us the extent of the problem. Instead, the Biden administration is saying there's not a problem. So, Madam President, this pattern is all too familiar. History has shown us time and time again how fear and manufactured urgency are used as pretexts to expand government power at the expense of freedom. After 9/11, Congress passed the Patriot Act in the name of security. Americans were promised that these surveillance powers were necessary. They would only be directed towards foreigners. They would only be directed towards terrorists until we discovered that these powers were being used on Americans. Americans were promised that these powers were necessary and temporary. Instead, they were abused, misused, and weaponized. Innocent Americans had their privacy violated, their data collected, and their rights trampled. The lesson here is clear. When Congress legislates in haste, without careful scrutiny, without debate, and without accountability, it is the American people who suffer the consequences. Today, we are facing a similar moment. The bill before us would grant law enforcement significant authority to intercept private electronic communications without consent. For example, the bill would allow the government to conduct dragnet surveillance of the phones innocent Americans traveling through U.S. airports as long as the government claims they are doing it to neutralize a drone. So in order to look at the information that might be coming to a drone, it may be that you capture all the information of everybody surrounding an airport or everybody who lives near an airport. Once you have all that data, what are the assurances that the government isn't looking at your data in addition to the data that may be related to flying the drone? This is not just about security, it's about unchecked government overreach. It's about capitalizing on fear and media-driven hysteria to jam through sweeping legislation that could violate the civil liberties of American people. Congress has a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check on the executive power, not as a rubber stamp for it. The federal government already has the power to deal with drones. The federal government already has the power to stop any drones that are in airspace around airports. The federal government already has the power to protect its air bases. So if there is a significant problem here, the Biden administration needs to come forward and let us know who are these drones, who's operating these drones, what is the federal government doing to protect either airports or bases from this. Instead, we are told by the Biden administration there is no threat to our national security. So let's first insist on truth and transparency from the Biden administration before offering up legislation that is feel good, pat somebody on the back and say, oh, we've done something about drones. We are strong on drones. Congress has a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check on executive power, not as a rubber stamp. We owe it to the American people to demand compelling justification, meaningful safeguards, and full transparency before granting any new surveillance authorities. We are a nation of laws, not fear, not panic, and not manufactured urgency. We do not trade away our freedoms, our privacy, and our constitutional protections for vague promises of security. I will object to this bill today, but I am open to talking with the authors of this bill about how we could have enhanced ability to interrupt drone activity, but done while protecting all Americans' constitutional right to privacy. Madam President, I object.
Objection is heard.
See? Oh, pardon me. Now, I'm not saying that this is the sole reason for why these military drones are in the air, okay? One thing you'll learn about the system is that it's a very multifaceted, multi-objective, multi-factioned organisation. Yeah? There's never just a single objective with these guys, ever. Every given situation that is down to the system, they will maximise to its fullest and get several things done at once. One of the examples that I use quite a lot to Marley, get off it, to explain after a bloody football, you've got plenty of balls at home just because you've lost yours. What was that? Yeah, one of the things that I use as an example to explain how the system does these kind of things is is 9/11. Yeah. Now, I use Building 6 as an example of this, and before all you keyboard warriors start typing in the comments, I think you mean Building 7. There was Building 7 and the 2 World Trade Centers and then the Pentagon. No, it wasn't just them. There wasn't just them. And this is something that a lot of people leave out, right? I have no idea why. Well, I do have an idea why. We'll get to that in a minute. Building 6 was the US Coast Guard office. It was also the only building around that area that had a 10-level basement that was in the car park. All the rest of the buildings, including Building 7, didn't have a basement, right? At the bottom of that basement was a vault. Now, that housed everything for every 3-letter agency going in the New York area. Yeah, the security at that vault was second only to the New York Fed for security, right? And everyone put all their evidence in that vault. Yeah, the DEA, FBI, CIA, NSA, ATF, you name it. Yeah, all the good ones. So there was evidence for capital crimes, RICO cases, evidence against the Clintons, against the Bushes, all sorts. Anyway, the morning of 9/11, about 6 or 7 a.m, there's reports of a fire at Building 6. And this fire was intense enough to eat through 2 of the, I think it's either 5 and 9 floors, yeah, of the building, upper floors of the building. So there was a huge gaping hole in the side of it. Now the fire crews were there all morning trying to put it out, and were even caught on camera just as the first plane hit. When you see that footage, that really famous footage of the fireman stood just down the road from the World Trade Center, and the plane flies over his head, and he stood there in full gear with an axe, yeah? Full kit and an axe. No, that's why he was there dressed like that, yeah? That's why. This led a FEMA agent who was investigating the area to determine the damage. When he got to Building 6 and had a look, to go down into the basement to check the vault and the other floors, the other basement floors. And when he got down to the vault, he found it empty. Completely empty. He also found a hole stemming from where that vault was, going right the way up the floors, yeah? The basement floors, up every single basement floor and out the top floors, and you can see the sky, clouds going up past above him. And all that evidence was gone. This was one aspect of the 9/11 attacks that no one ever talks about. They always want to concentrate on the Jews that were dancing at the, like, nearby. Yeah, they were Mossad agents. Yeah, they were involved. But you can't discount everyone else just because they were there. In fact, you need to sort of sidestep them a little bit, because they're the obvious distractions to keep from all the rest of the shit that was going on. Yeah? That dancing Israeli story started the day of 9/11. No one ever questions it. Why? How come it started back then? How come it's still pushing out? Why does nobody talk about Building 6? The Israelis had a hand in 9/11, sure. So did the Saudis. Definitely the wider deception industrial complex as well, which are Western intelligence, I keep telling you. Primarily CIA and MI6. They had the biggest stake in it. Even the Pentagon had a hand in it. By demolishing Building 7, they wiped out all the digital records of their accounts, and then when they fired that missile into the wall of the Pentagon, it wasn't a plane. It just so happened to be the side of the building that was only just renovated and held their entire hard copy accounting department. $7 trillion gone, up in smoke. And all the evidence that would have likely led to that, and probably an earlier conviction for Jeffrey Epstein, maybe even did it, who knows, all went away. And this is the coordination of these people. This is the multifaceted nature of these people, because each and every sort of theory devised about that day are all right. Yet we fight about them all, trying to say, well, ours is right, ours is right. They're all fucking correct. This is how the system works. Like I said, this with the drones, and also with the Luigi Mangione, is the deception industrial complex at its best. Watch and learn, people. And learn, really learn.